I'm making this video today because tomorrow is election day and I'm very worried about it. I'm very worried about the Democrats. A lot of people are worried about the Democrats, and I'll tell you why I am worried about them, plus a couple of other things. And I'll keep this short. I just want to reassure you that there are many reasons to vote for either side. First of all, I know that the Democrats, and I've been a Democrat 90% of my life, voted that way, worked in presidential campaigns for Democrats, and I was a congressional press secretary in a Democratic office in Washington, D.C. And I know that the Democrats have done quite a few good things, and this year, 2024, they're proposing quite a few things. Just as one example, they are proposing that the medical insurance system be overhauled, and I am all for that. There's no question that the independent private insurance companies, medical insurance companies, have us by the throat. I don't have to go into that too much. So I'm very happy that the Democrats are active on that issue. But let's go into the election just for a couple of minutes, and I'll try to tell you why I think I'm voting the way that I am. I've said enough about the Democrats in a positive spirit. I'm worried about the Democrats, but I'm not worried that they're going to lose. I'm hoping that they do. The president, a Democrat, has just told you that there's a 50-50 chance or so that you are a piece of garbage. And Hillary Clinton, who wanted to be president and thank goodness was not given that honor, Hillary Clinton compared a Trump rally recently to a Nazi rally. That shows pretty much one of the great ways to be elected president. Get Hillary to say something for the other side. Get Hillary to say something for your opponent. All right, what about the Democratic Party? To me, they have abandoned their working class principles, their principles that helped working people, whether in the so-called working class or middle class or anywhere else. The Democrats have abandoned those principles. In my opinion, the Democrats have snuggled up to the wrong people. They've snuggled up to high tech. They've snuggled up to the military industrial or military corporate complex. And they've snuggled up to other people who used to be pro-Republican. And the Republicans have switched sides also because they recognize that they can't be elected unless they appeal to a wider swath of people than big corporate types. And at the same time, as I say, the Democrats have moved that way towards the big corporate types because those people, those types, have funded them. That's the major reason, of course. And also because, well, the other major reason is that Democratic politicians don't believe that it's right to keep the working class or working people principles that they used to have. It's really pretty amazing. Well, we all know the results of the past 4 years. We all know the results of Democratic rule. Very high grocery prices, gasoline prices that only a sheik could pay, and very high prices for rents and for mortgages. The Democrats have blown it, absolutely blown the economy. And again, you don't have to go into very many details to prove that. The mere assertion of that is enough. Let me give you another example. The Democrats years ago, just a few years ago actually, finally got around to reforming some parts of the medical insurance problem in America, and that was called Obamacare. The Democrats, the Obamacare Democrats, yelled and screamed that this was the greatest thing in the history of the cosmos, something really progressive. Those who know about these things, and I do know a little bit about it, also know that Obamacare now brings America up to the standards of Germany in 1900. In 1900. We are still 125 years or so behind the truly progressive countries. And Germany's just an example. Even New Zealand, tiny New Zealand, 5 million people, far away from any Marxist influence, has a medical insurance system at least 100 years ahead of ours. So the Democrats have done very little, even with regard to medical insurance. They've also, of course, this is famous, during the last 4 years, they've let in an indiscriminate rush of illegal immigrants. I'm all for immigration. If my ancestors hadn't emigrated to America, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be benefiting from that. We're all immigrants, most of us. But illegal immigrants have caused amazing social and economic problems, and they're here basically to stuff the voter rolls for the Democrats. They're also here to have babies. The birth rate among Latinos is far higher than among other Americans, and the Democrats have recognized that. And so they've brought in illegal immigrants to have babies to shore up the sagging birth rates in America. Babies, babies, and babies. So what's ironic about that? What's terrible about that? Well, the abortion policies of the Democrats speak exactly against that. You all know the details. They're totally pro-abortion, and they are disgustingly in favor of abortion in many cases, that is, even after birth. That's enough said about that. That's not just ironic. It's immoral. It's completely wrong. Let me say this too about what the Democrats have done. This is one of the worst things they've done. They've destroyed the notion of common sense. We used to have a common sense of common sense. But let me ask you a few questions here. Since then, since the Democrats took over at least, they have been emphasizing the demise of common sense, not just in the last 4 years, but spread out over our recent history farther than that. So let me ask you some countervailing questions. How much brilliance does it take, for example, to see that there really are only two genders, only two sexes? How much common sense do you have to see that? Very little. But there are a lot of Democrats who don't even have the common sense to see that. And so, what are the results? Well, one result is that giant muscular men are in the swimming pool competing with not so giant and not so muscular women. Of course, the Democrats will do nothing about that. How bright do you have to see, for instance, also, that broadcasting companies ought to give us objective news instead of superficial and silly commentary by so-called journalists? The major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, and so forth, and CNN especially, have devolved, not evolved, but devolved into, as I say, superficial propaganda agencies for the Democrats. They don't even do it intelligently. It's amazing. What does this have to do with common sense? Well, common sense would say that a news show should give you news, and they don't these days. Instead of that, they give you, as I've said, propaganda. Another thing, how smart do you have to be, looking back a few years ago, to see that the Antifa riots really were riots led by a bunch of thugs? I just ask the question again. How much common sense do you have to see? How much common sense do you have to see that? How much common sense do you have to see also that we need to preserve English as our common language? A country needs a common language. Yes, I know Switzerland has 4, but they have a far different history than we do. And they've managed to overcome any gaps in that, because I would imagine in Switzerland that everybody learns 1 or 2 of the other languages besides their own. Here in America, that's very uncommon. Almost no Americans, as a percentage, speak a so-called second language or foreign language. And we need to preserve English as our national language. Personally, I'd like to ask you, how much do you like to phone a corporation and hear for the millionth time as an English speaker, press 2 for Spanish? I lived in Germany 15 years. I learned German thoroughly. There is no press 2 for English in Germany. They know they've got to preserve their national language, and we do too. Last thing, how bright do you have to be? How much common sense do you need to perceive that the United States has fought far too many senseless wars in Vietnam and since then. The Democrats, again, under Biden, push exactly the opposite notion. Totally in favor of war, more war in Ukraine, more war here, there, and everywhere. And believe me, more is coming if the Democrats stay in power. Remember, Joe Biden said, the so-called president, that it would be a bad thing if Russia were to invade Ukraine. I saw him say this in a recording. I'm not taking the word of somebody else. He did say that, and he went on to say something about, well, if it was a minor incursion, that would be another thing. And he accuses Trump of being a Russian spy. It's unbelievable. I'm not accusing Biden of being a Russian spy. I'm just accusing him of being senseless. So with all of that about the Democrats, it's quite easy to see why Donald Trump appeals to so many people. He appeals to them on the basis, really, I think, of common sense. He's a man of certain principles, and he doesn't let go of them. And a lot of those principles at least appear to be working towards the working class. In other words, he has an attitude that is pro-working people. He seems to. The Democrats don't even seem to. So what I'm saying is, I'm not urging you to go out there and vote for Trump. He has a lot of faults, and a bunch of his positions I disagree with as an almost lifetime Democrat. But I do urge you to do one thing, and that is withhold your vote from Kamala. I do urge you to do one thing. Don't vote for Kamala. Vote for anyone else.